Hi everyone, welcome to the Once a DJ roundtable around AI and its impact on hip-hop. We've got a panel today of both hip-hop and AI tech experts in different ways with a variety of experiences. So we've got Rich Firth, aka DJ Superix, who's a creative consultant working in AR and AI-based content creation. We've got Nick Eziefula, aka Essa, entertainment lawyer at Simkins LLP and UK hip hop MC. And we've got Si Gilbert, aka Si Spex, pioneering UK hip hop producer and head of content and quality control at Rootnote Create, a partner to Rootnote distribution company. The mission of this roundtable, really, then, guys, is to just have a bit of a discussion about where we're at with AI, because, I mean, this is discussion that's everywhere, but I think from a point of view of hip-hop, it's got its own sort of unique lens. So I think we can have a look at kind of where it's at now, where we've come from in terms of technology, creation, IP, things like that, and where we feel this is heading and whether we should be embracing it, scared of it, or whether we see any pitfalls. So I think in the first instance, if you guys would just like to give us any sort of more insight into your backgrounds, if we can start off with you, Nick.
Yeah, sure. So I'm an entertainment industry lawyer, specialize in contracts and IP, and I work for people across the whole entertainment and media space. I have a particular passion for the music industry and the tech space as well. And the music passion comes from my background as an artist. Actually, let me show you this shameless plug here. That's my first ever record. It actually came out more years ago than I'd like to admit. So we reissued it on vinyl just recently. So come from a background making rap music. And my clients are a mixture of creatives, so talent of all kinds, investors, companies that work with talent, a real mixture, to be honest. And we're doing a lot of work on AI at the moment. So even as recently as yesterday, I was training in-house legal team from one of the leading labels and publishers on AI-related issues. So it's a bit of a flavour of the kind of stuff that we do here.
Brilliant, thank you. Si?
Yeah, well, I mean, I've pretty much been a hip-hop head since probably about 84, breakdancing and just getting into the beats and the music side of it. DJing to sort of then obsessing over the source of a lot of the music, like the breaks, sort of collecting breaks, and then just I was always just fascinated in how it was made. So kind of no internet obviously back then, so you'd have to kind of work things out for yourself. But got my first sampler when I was about I saved up for a whole summer. Yeah, I was about 16, and then upgraded again to an Ensoniq EPS, and the rest is history. Then just moved to London, created a group called The Creators with another guy, Julian, and we did a lot of stuff with a lot of American artists and UK artists back in the 90s when it was a little bit of a sort of not such a fertile ground. Like, we'd had the original sort of first wave of hip hop with your Hijacks and your Demon Boys and Caveman and that kind of thing, which was amazing. I was totally obsessed with all that sort of thing. But that kind of early 90s sort of died off, and then, until your sort of task forces, people like that, and the Jests came out, and your Essas sort of, in the sort of late 90s, I guess, sort of it started to pick up again.
Early noughties for me.
Yeah, late 90s, early noughties.
Trying to cling on to each bit of youth you can.
So we were just kind of putting stuff out. Signed to Wall of Sound Records to put like a long player out in 2000. And then, sorry, man.
I was just going to say, and then I think something that both you and Julian were known for and respected for is what you were doing in terms of sampling and like crate digging, which I think will kind of come into your your view and the significance of it within this discussion.
Yeah.
Could you just tell us a bit about then your sort of day job and what Root Create does?
Well, I've been working for about four or 5 years for Root, originally with the distribution arm, which is, I mean, we're actually the biggest European independent distributor. So it's like a really big company. It's based down here in Cornwall, so right on my doorstep in Truro. And yeah, we have over 3 million users, and yeah, currently just struggling to get all the content up. We get so much stuff coming through. So the distribution side of things is going really well. And we've got different products as well, which I work on the sample. We've got like a sample site called Root Create. So it's all royalty-free samples, subscription-based. We're actually, well, by far the most reasonable, subscription and sample service out there. Starts at like $2.99 a month for 100 credits. Because I think the thing with Root is we're very much about giving everyone an opportunity and sort of making things affordable. With Root distribution, we offer like free distribution where we just take a small cut. So yeah, it's just allowing sort of, your people starting out and your bedroom producers and maybe people in other countries that don't really have the, the means, sort of take a Splice subscription or something like that. So we offer like, really good value.
Yeah, I guess there's something in that as well that we've probably got to consider in this around barrier to entry, because that's something that's changed over the years since you started, for example. How difficult it is to create music. There's certain things that are probably easier and certain things that are more difficult. So Rich, could you just give us some of your background, please?
Yeah, I mean, not similar to Si, I guess. 80s kind of hip hop, head, really. Early 80s, I got into it then with all the electro compilations, and then was just completely addicted to it. Breakdancing, everything like that, and obsessed with how scratching, how that sound was made. So, just destroyed many of my father's record players, including the vertical one that couldn't even open properly. So I was always interested in tinkering with things, I guess. So how do things work? When computers were affordable, started using sound tracker stuff, on the Amiga and making beats that way, because I could never really afford the equipment, and I probably wasn't as dedicated as I'd like to be if I was more onto the DJing side of things. So yeah, I started DJing properly, I guess in what was it? Would have been like 96 or something, when I was a student and could blow my load on some turntables, which I still have. So all the other guys, I was on a graphic design course, everyone was buying Apple Macs, and all their Macs now have long since obsolete and on the scrap heap. Still got the Technics though. They're built like tanks. But yeah, so I went to art college, studied graphic design, and so I was always the two sort of ran side by side for me, visual side of things and design side. But also it was the time when the internet was starting to really take off. So I was building early websites and things like that, and learning how all that side of things worked, and even audio streaming and downloading dodgy MP3s and things like that, and just getting to grips with everything like that. And now I still do that in a sense. I'm a creative director. We do a lot of augmented reality things now, so we do some stuff for Nike and Jordan Brand quite a lot. So we're putting things in places that don't exist, basically big 3D things and activations and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm very much interested in that now, how you can put something somewhere where it isn't normally. But then with the music side of things, still very much interested in music, still making stuff, but I've definitely embraced, I'd say, AI recently, just because I'm fascinated with how it all works,
Yeah.
and how it can have a place in the world without taking over, I guess, humans. But we're going to get into that a little bit more, I guess. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So if you can get ready to sort of do your demo, then Rich, I'll just explain the reason we're kind of doing this in the first place was because Rich was tinkering around with this and sending me over bits and bobs. So
Yeah,
for
I
context
sent you some
of,
stuff, didn't I? That I was seeing if you. I sent you a track, and I know the sort of music that you're into you quite like the obscure sort of bits and pieces, breaks and things like that. So I sent you something, and then I didn't tell you for a little while that was created in AI basically, and that's how it started.
and it was pretty amazing, and we kept talking because to give you an idea of where I'm at, because I probably know quite a bit more about you guys than you would know about me. I was later getting into hip hop and getting into DJing and things than you guys. It was sort of the very back end of the 90s I started to discover hip hop, and then sort of from there, when I was searching for things, that my real hook was samples and sample sources, and I was fortunate enough to be able to just type everything into a computer and find out everything apart from RJD2 samples, pretty much, because he's very guarded about it. But so I came into it a lot later, and I guess I'm kind of a bit of a historian because I just love storytelling and things, and I run the Once a DJ podcast, which Si's been on in a couple of episodes without giving too many spoilers. So we were just talking about this more and more, and I thought it'd be just great to get more people together that know about this world and to discuss it from the ethical, the commercial, the creative sort of point of view. Rich, are you ready for your demo?
Yeah, so it's worth just saying when you say AI and music creation, there's lots of different permutations of that and applications, right? So there's the one that probably the recent example, I guess, is the Drake, the BBL Drizzy thing, right? So people are typing a bunch of song lyrics, and you can feed it into essentially a platform, and you can choose a style of song style or genre, and it's a bit hit and miss, but you get a list of results, and some of it is amazing, and some of it's not so amazing, but it is quite blows you away. I mean, that's pretty damn good, isn't it, considering it's been created just purely with AI. But then there's other applications of AI, as in plugins to DAWs, right? So like you got your plugins to Logic and whatnot, where you can create melodies, and you can use it as part of a flow, I guess, a production flow. And then you've got lyrics, and you can create songs, entire vocals. You could sing along in a mic and change the voice to something completely different. So people have been doing that a lot. If you're not a good singer, I mean, auto-tune's been around for a while now, and there's a step further from that in terms of voice changing and things like that. But there's also a lot of mastering applications now, so AI mastering, and also AI mix downs for the different platforms. Like Spotify have some slightly different requirements to someone else, for example. So there's a bunch of stuff like that. But this I've been messing around with something called Suno, which is there's sort of two. There's something called Udio or Udio. I think it's Udio and Suno, and they seem to be the two that I think are the strongest out there at generating with prompts and styles. So if I can, I'm going to show you a quick little demo, and I've got some prompts that I've already sort of written because I know that they give good results. So I'm going to share my screen. Let me just share my screen, and let me just share that. So can you guys see that okay?
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of like the this is the create screen. So you pick, I want to put it as an instrumental for now. So in terms of, like, I know if you wanted to create something, let's just create something that, you know, I don't know, a random song. So let's just do something like Motown song about sausages or something, right? I don't know why that's the first thing that came into my head, but anyway, Motown song about, and then put some other music style in so Motown, soul, do what 60s, see if that comes up with something. Just put sausages of soul. Okay, I'll do that. No, just create that, right? So it's going to give us two kind of generations, and this is real time. It does it super fast. I'm sure it's really bad for the environment. So sorry about that. There's probably like a few trees that have sacrificed their lives for this. Let's have a look. Okay, so let's see what this does.
About sausages.
Right. Okay, you get the idea, and then it will give you another result.
Motown song about sausages. A Motown song about sausages.
Right, you get the idea, right? So that's currently what you could do with these applications, Suno and Udio. You can get into things, you can stick instrumental stuff in. I'm going to just do a quick one that I've got some prompts for. So I know, Si, you're big on library music, and I created some library music, sort of fake library music.
Mm-hmm.
But the prompts for this, so if you do a specific prompt with the artist in mind, you get better results. But the problem is, legally, you're not really allowed to. It says we can't process that if you put a specific artist name in. If you spell the artist name slightly wrong, you can generally get a result. So if we do like, yeah, I know. I'm not going to tell you how I know that, but it's partly through my own errors, but also someone mentioned it to me who works in AI. So if we put library music, 70s instrumental, and then I'm going to just put, I'm going to put some
James Brownie.
I'm gonna put some. I've got some. I've got some good prompts here. Live music, 70s instrumental, and then I'm gonna put in a bunch of these prompts. So what I've put in is late 70s British animal TV theme music, library music style, KPM, flutes, harps, DeWolf. Right. So let's see what we get from that. I've had pretty good results just tinkering with these prompts. Do
you think, is it familiar with KPM and with particular labels? Do you know, man?
I think so, because I think like it's scraped Spotify, Apple, and Apple have a bunch of KPM stuff up there.
Okay.
And so does Spotify. So that's what I think it's doing. I think it's scraping this stuff.
That's what I wanted to ask, man.
Yeah,
because especially with go on.
Check it out. So that's one result. It's pretty impressive. And then so it's like, it's basically creating.
It's Terry and June.
It's Terry and June, but from other results that I've had, I've created. There's some of the drum breaks are just nuts on there. So
does it understand the prompt dope, rare,
No.
ill? Okay.
It doesn't, but it does understand. Like, here we go. Check this out. Oh, bugger. Hang on. Check this out. It's just gonna. So, it's got some dope little flute stuff and piano bits, and it can do drum. It's got some killer drum breaks as well that I've found. Not found. I've created using this. And I think that's the thing. You can't say you're not really creating it. You're just putting prompts in, right? You're not making any of this stuff. So when you create one of these, I guess, library track things, you can chop them all up, and like you would have done if you'd have got a proper sample from somewhere, right? So you can take these things, you can chop them all up. The quality isn't amazing at the moment, but it's the next iteration of these things is track separation and stems, so you'll be able to strip out individual instruments, and that's where it's going. It's quite fun to play with, but that's just a quick demo of what those things do. And the more specific you get with prompts, the more outputs you're going to get closer to something that you are after. But I don't think you're truly at the moment going to get something exactly what you really, really want. You're not going to get that, but you're going to be able to cut those things up and probably create something, with the human element, the actual us making things still. You're going to be able to use it as a tool. It's a tool, I think.
I think for me, having kind of had a little play with them, it's like, from my point of view, when a lot of these AI things, I use them sometimes, or I've tried using them for things like transcription and stuff like that. And it's the equivalent of when you see an AI generated image where someone's got like 7.5 fingers, or
I mean, that's
their
exactly
eyes
what
like
it is.
coming out of their ear or whatever. Like, it's nearly right, but if you look hard enough, it's not.
We're on the and these are the versions that are accessible to us currently for the public, right? So there's beta versions of this stuff that is I've seen some demos, and it is pretty bonkers. Like the video thing that was out a couple of months ago, the AI video. Damn, forgot the name of it. Sora. That is bonkers. That I can't tell the difference.
So, Nick, just leaning into some of the things that Rich has mentioned there, then, kind of about the scraping, and I guess we're looking at where does creativity start and stop, because you can quite blatantly say, I want something that's like a DeWolf or a KPM that's got a strong sense of identity based on certain composers and producers. And the sort of thing with the typos and things, there's a lot you can do there. What are the latest discussions around the sort of moral and creative standpoints on this?
Well, morality and creativity is what you asked about. I'm going to actually speak about legal, which it arguably is slightly different from both those things. But the first thing I want to say is that unless I'm mistaken, and I'm not familiar with that particular platform, but there are a few platforms out there that have been properly licensed to be able to provide that kind of service. So to set up that platform, it will have to have been trained on a number of inputs. And you mentioned, Rich, that platforms is kind of just scraping data from across the internet, basically from lots of different music services. So there are kind of cases being heard about this now, and there's a lot of legal thought on the status of that. But consensus, pretty much, is that ingesting someone else's copyright work into your AI model without their permission is highly likely to be a copyright infringement, right?
Yeah.
So for these platforms to operate at scale in a lawful way, they're going to need to get a license from the owners of all of the recordings and all the compositions that have been ingested into the platform. But the issues don't stop there, because there's tricky legal questions to address, like who owns the output? And is the output capable of being a copyright work that's capable of being owned in the first place? For example, if I was using the platform at the same time as you and typed in the exact same prompts, would it bring out the exact same output? Sometimes not, is my understanding. Might be slightly different depending on who does it at which time. And there are different arrangements between platform and user as to who owns the output and who's responsible for it, etc. So there's a few tricky questions there. A lot of that's to do with copyright law, and the fundamental basis of copyright law is kind of, the name gives it away. You can't copy or make lots of other uses of someone else's copyright work without their permission. But even beyond copyright law, there's other issues with this. So one of the prompts that you put in, Rich, mentioned a brand name, effectively. I think it was KPM and then DeWolf as well. Yeah. And in some instances, those brand names might well be registered as trademarks, and someone owns that brand name. Or even if they've not registered it, sometimes they'll have various rights in respect to their brand. So again, there might be kind of different sorts of permission needed. And also there are people using these sorts of tools to generate sound alike and with audiovisual stuff look alike content. And that again could be something that infringes the brand related rights of the relevant people. So a good example, actually there's a test case here that isn't really an AI case, but something I want to mention. The Rick Astley song "Never Gonna Give You Up" was recently reworked into a new track by a rapper called Young Gravy. But it's an interesting test case for AI. They didn't use AI for this process, as far as I'm aware, but it's an interesting example because what they did is they cleared the publishing rights. So there's rights in the sound recording and there's rights in the publishing. That's two separate copyrights. They went to the owners of the song, the owners of whoever had written that song, whoever published it, and they cleared it and they got permission. And then instead of sampling the original Rick Astley recording, they just played it again, replayed it effectively, and sang it again with someone who did a very kind of close sound-alike performance of it. So they didn't actually use the original recording. So they didn't have to clear the recording at all. So there was no copyright infringement. They cleared the publishing. They didn't copy the recording. But Astley took issue with this because he felt that his material was being kind of used somehow in a way that he wasn't comfortable with without his permission. And it's basically based on a kind of area of law that broadly you can refer to as false endorsement. The idea of someone misappropriating your brand or your goodwill or your IP and using it in a way that you're not comfortable with. And I think that whole that case, by the way, was settled. It didn't go to court. We don't have like a precedent set by it. But I think that whole area of the law is going to be super relevant in an age of kind of deep fakes and sound alikes, etc., that are powered by AI tools. So lots and lots of issues. But I don't want to, just one brief thing I want to say is, although I'm super aware of the legal issues and the challenges and the need for clearance and things to be made lawful, I'm not a skeptic. I'm not I don't want to be negative. Like I see the potential and the power and the opportunity that this technology offers, and I'm very excited by that. Not just as what I do in business and as a lawyer, clients of mine I work with, finding really interesting ways to leverage this technology to create new opportunities, but also as a creative myself. The idea of being able to work these things into the creative process and find lawful ways of enhancing the creative process with this technology is very exciting. So I'm not one of those cynics who's all doom and gloom about it, but as a lawyer, I'm very aware of some of the issues.
It is interesting what you just said about just a bit before about the output. Who owns the output? So if Suno, for example, you made something with legit prompts that you didn't say use artist names or label names, and you created something, then you sampled that, and you then sold that as a work that you have created. And then Suno was like, somehow later they're like, because all this stuff was being stored in the cloud, right? So they're like, oh, this is flagged on our platform, this track that you use this and you're making this money from it. What's to stop them saying, we now want a piece of that pie, even though you paid for a subscription to our platform? Like, do you know what I mean? That's
Absolutely. So, I mean, look, as it stands under the law right now, an AI it can't be a legal person. A human being can be a person. A company can be a person in the eyes of the law, like an entity in the eyes of the law. But AI can't currently. So you have to think about, well, which legal person is the owner of the output of that of that, and is it the person that input the prompts? Is it the platform developers, the people that own the platform, the technology that generated the outputs? To some extent, might the people whose inputs were used have a stake in what the outputs are? And there's kind of quite complex legal questions about that. But ultimately, and I can't generalize across lots of different legal systems, but definitely there's an argument to be made that the person that created the technology that creates these works is the owner of the output. But the terms of these platforms then specify as between user and platform who owns the output. And there are often platforms that, the whole point of the service is you go onto it and get some material that you can then do things with. So a lot of them say, well, you can own the output on certain conditions, etc. So it's a trick. That's a whole other minefield, basically.
And just coming back to what you were saying about replays as well. That's effectively how Dre did most of his stuff around the sort of 2001 era, I think, isn't it? Possibly before it was a lot of replaying so that they didn't have to get the publishing rights.
Well, replay it avoids the need to clear the recording rights. So if you literally replay a track that you've heard, the original recording of it, you're not using it because you're just playing it again yourself. But you are using the composition. If you're playing the same song. Then and that's the music publishing rights, the composition. So you would have to clear the publishing, but you wouldn't have to clear the recording. But if you then adjust it, change it, make it a little bit different, make it a bit more new, and go somewhere a bit further from the original with it, then potentially what you end up with is not a copy. You're not reusing someone else's song. You may end up effectively having used their song as inspiration, and then you've come up with your own thing separately. But there are loads of cases about where that fine line is blurred line, I would even say.
Lines,
there's a big case about that.
very good.
But recently there have been, poor old Ed Sheeran seems to be sued about this for every other week, pretty much. But there's a couple of quite significant cases that he was involved in which he won about these kinds of issues. About how similar is it to the original. And the basic test is have you copied a under English law this is, but it's quite similar in a few other places like the US and various other places too. The basic test is have you copied a substantial part of the original creation of someone else, and if you have copied a substantial part of it, then it's likely to be copyright infringement unless there are exceptions to copyright that might apply or other defenses that might apply.
Yeah. Si, we've had different emerging technologies throughout history, well, obviously, but saying sort of hip hop creation and things, we started off with replays really in the early days. I was going to say,
hip hop was the early sort of recorded hip hop was all interpolations of classic disco tracks and the breaks at the time. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then we had the technology of samplers and even things like the sort of Linn drums and things like that. There's always been things around that. I mean, even sort of some of the plugins you're using for emulating drum kits and things like that, that's still AI and it's emulation. It's based on something someone else has done. Like, how do you feel about using something like AI for sampling, and do you see it as a threat? I mean, digging is something that's become far more competitive now. You can just get it on Discogs if you've got the money. You get people start out DJing that have got enough money to go off and get those kind of like top level sort of digger records and stuff straight off Discogs. Whereas, you know, for people like you and I, you know, we're trying to find them as a bargain, and it's almost a fun thing as well. But do you see a value in AI? So like it's like, you know, you could use that to get some originality, say, into a DJ set, or you can be sampling something you're 100% sure no one else has sampled.
Yeah, it's weird for me because I've basically, in the last sort of 3 or 4 years, I've stopped sampling more or less. But I'm being inspired. I'm using old music as inspiration, and I'm kind of trying to recreate stuff. Sometimes it will be like a direct copy, almost an interpolation. But other times it will just be like, I'll just get a vibe from something and try and recreate it. So I'm trying to do the sort of thing that I thought I'd be a little bit immortal, that not many other people are doing, sort of using virtual instruments and processing plugins to make it sound old. And I was really getting there. And then suddenly, Udio rocks up, and it's like, okay, I just need to type in deep soul and boom, it's better than the stuff I've been doing. But at the same time, it does sound shit. It's like, you know, at the moment it sounds like some dodgy stem extracted. It's like when people get excited about stem extraction. I mean, to me, that's the holy grail of sampling. You know, I've been obsessed with it since the RX-7 and all that came out. But still, to this day, you know, occasionally it'll sound okay, but it's not that usable, particularly with drums and things like that. And especially, you know, drums seem to be the big Achilles heel, I think, of AI at the moment.
Did you just on the stem separation? I remember a good few years ago, I don't know if you know a guy, Michael. I was on an online discussion that was kind of talking about Bismarcky claiming to have Mardi Gras without the cowbells. Yeah. And there was some sort of clips of that. And then at the time, there was something called like Photo Sounder or something where you could kind of effectively do the separation yourself using like a Photoshop sort of a frequency and time sort of chart. And you could pull it out, and it didn't sound perfect, but to me, it didn't sound any worse than the kind of stem separation that you're getting, because I'm with you on it. It's, if they can get that studio quality, that's something different.
Yeah, and this is what I wanted to sort of quiz Rich on a little bit, because I'm trying to wrap my head around how it's doing it. And I'm wondering if there is a glass ceiling, like if it's basically like stem separation. I don't think it's ever going to create perfect stems as like a, you know, a master record, you know, multi-track stems. I don't think it'll get quite close. But I think it's actually an impossibility to take a stereo master and just take things out perfectly with no artifacts. So is that the same thing? Is the technology that it's using, currently, do you think it can only get so far? Because I can't get my head around the fact that it's creating things in one lump rather than analyze, I'm going to write the bass part, the string part, the vocal part. But apparently the people I talk to say that it actually does just kind of create it second by second as one whole lump, which to me, my brain doesn't even compute that. It seems nuts.
I'm pretty sure that's how it's doing it. It's a bit like, I imagine it's when it's analyzing all this music, right? So all the stuff that is, like, for years people have been tagging music, right? What genre it is, it's got flute drums or whatever. This all exists in like the behind the MP3 or behind the digital music somewhere. There's a bunch of info, and so the AI algorithms are going to scan all that stuff, and they're going to then look at the waveform, the shapes of the waveform. And then it's also looking at the genre music, and it's basically faking it. it's faking that, and it's saying, I'll put that there, that's a drum sound, that's a flute sound, that's a vocal sound. The vocals are nuts. That is baffling to me. But the music, I sort of know roughly how it's doing it. But in terms of in the future, like you say, there's a glass ceiling to this stuff. Is that as good as it's going to get? I mean, the quality will always get better, but will you be able to? I think it might, and the reason why I think it's going to be able to create that track, then it's going to pass another an analyzing process where it'll stem separate that, and then it can create then a MIDI patterns from that, so you can get bass lines, drums, and it's and then there's going to be an output of that, so you'll get MIDI plus chopped up samples, but you will always have to tinker a bit. That's what I was wanting to say. I think it's you will get a bunch of stuff, but then you're gonna need to tinker with it. Like,
can I be honest? Yeah. I think that's a way off, because I mean, I do a lot of MIDI extraction as well, and that struggle. So for it to be able to on one level do the audio, and on another level analyze each individual stemmed out, it'll do bass is no problem, but all the other stuff, it's such a soup. With, I mean, maybe with techno music and sort of dance music and ambient, that's kind of a lot easier, but with older music where it's just a big old soupy mess.
Yeah, no, that's really
no disrespect. I know that sounded a bit disrespectful to old music.
No, but it is right. It's not like if you took a new hip hop track, right, where it's quite clean and there's space and it would deal with that pretty easily. But like if you took I don't know, like a record by the Blackbirds or something, you know, how's it gonna? This will require a bit of intervention, and so I think you'll get a certain. Yeah,
I was wondering whether it could feasibly use like art, you know, mix it as you're suggesting, blend it with sort of MIDI kind of notated versions, because obviously you've got, is it Dance Diffusion that can analyze and create one shots as well from if you feed it a sound like a synth sound or whatever, it can kind of emulate that. So I mean, it can kind of already do that a little bit, but
there's
I don't know,
Synplant 2, which
I've seen that one as well.
That one, that's the bonkers one where if you like add a little sample of a Rhodes keyboard or something, and you play that into it, it'll generate like 10 different versions of that Rhodes keyboard as a software synth, right? And it's like that's pretty amazing, but that requires isolation of that sound, right?
Sure,
to do that properly.
And also, it's all very well getting one shot that sounds accurate, but then obviously you've got round robins and you've got all the other sort of, you know, envelopes and that stuff that all comes into play. It's just so, you know, even the most accomplished MIDI composer who can kind of like, you know, emulate orchestras and stuff, they struggle, and, you know, even they will find it hard. So to make something, I understand what you mean. If you blend it in, maybe there's an element of that, but I mean, at the moment, it's the transients on drums. It's a lot of the transients that are struggling, which I think it could probably analyze and improve those. In fact, well, I was just going to say, have you checked you were saying about some new stuff coming through, but the 11 Labs, have you seen their new demos?
No, not yet.
Oh, well, I think they're close. Okay. This is, I mean, all this stuff that we're speculating, I think they'll get there, but it's like, by next Wednesday, I've seen a video where they've kind of solved that one. But 11 Labs have just released a load of demos on the same. They've written some silly lyrics about machine learning and done loads of different versions, country, rock, there's jazz ones. I'd say the musical composition they're long, they're like 3-minute songs as well, so it's handling more than 30 seconds now at a time. But I'll be honest, the thing that I was impressed with was the audio and the fact that the drums were starting to get punchier, and it's still not like a greatly mixed track, it probably wouldn't stand up against, a proper mastered track on the radio, but yeah, it's really getting there. As far as like I could imagine, feed it some stuff to make some old library music. It'd probably be good enough to use as if you sort of add your own layers and stuff to it. It would definitely be usable.
I think that's it. It would be, you would, at the moment, it's almost like it's an accompaniment to something, right? That you still want to do. And also that's the control. The control is something that I've noticed that what you have in your head, and this be it music creation or image creation, because I do use Mid-Journey as part of my day. Sometimes I need to create something for a visual for a client, and I can't. Normally what we'd do is go to image libraries or something, and I'd be like, I need this bit, and I'd chop it up and I'd Photoshop this thing together, and I'd eventually have this. With Mid-Journey, I've had quite good successes on creating something, then I'll cut it out and put it in its place and stuff and move it around. But it's still as part of another creative process. It's not just taking over an entire thing at the moment.
Now, I hear you all on all the limits, but the speed with which it's got to where it is now from when it had started is pretty extraordinary.
Within a year, Suno and don't forget, we're all, for all this stuff with image library as well, we're all training it, because when you get a bad result, you put a thumbs down. It's like ChatGPT. Did you like this output or whatever? You say no, then it's like, okay, I won't do that next time. Did you like this one? Yes. Okay, we'll do another one of those. And then it keeps refining and refining. So you're suddenly getting millions of users giving it all this input, saying this was bad, this wasn't. So you're training it all the time. So,
I mean, my understanding on an even broader level, not just generative AI for creative tools like this, but just more broadly, my understanding is the trajectory of AI is that it will be able to surpass the level of human intelligence in time. We're nowhere near there yet now, but I think it's speeding up, and it's going at a very swift pace. So I must say, I think a lot of these limitations, totally agree that they currently apply, and there are limits to what you can do with this stuff, and you need to enhance it yourself and all of that. But I don't think it'll be long before it's able to generate very workable, very usable stuff.
So I think with music, at the moment, with the current sort of level of technology, I think if Universal was to feed its entire back catalogue of stems, if it was actually to ingest a load of stems, it would stand a better chance of then using those to analyze things and put things together. I think it's the fact that it's trying to model stuff on already stereo mixed tracks it's such a challenge for it to do. I'm amazed it does it, but if you made it a lot easier, I guess that's the way forward. Is people will start just putting elements and stuff, feeding different sound effects and all this stuff into it that you can then use. It's like a palette.
A little example. There's a vocal. Have you guys seen what's it called now? It's I was using. It's got a stupid name anyway. I fed some. I went through a stem separation. I took the track "Lovers and Friends" by Little John, with Usher and Ludacris, and I took that. And there's no a cappella that exists of that, and there's no. So I separated it just using that Moises AI tool. Separated the vocals out, just the instrumental. Then I ran the a cappella through. There will be a link for this. I ran the a cappella through this site, put Homer Simpson's voice as one of the voices, and then ran it through again, chose Marge Simpson's voice, and then put it in a DAW just to see how good it would be, and then just separated parts out and had Homer and Marge singing on this thing, and it was incredible. So it was exactly like Homer Simpson and Marge.
Was it Jammable? Is Jammable the name, or Voicify? What have been called before?
It's something with a lot of L's in it.
Oh, okay. Something else.
Yeah, but the purpose of that is that you can. It's got people like Drake and every new rapper and every new singer on there as well. And there's mixed results because I put something through with Kendrick, and it was Kendrick in parts and wasn't in others, and it's a bit of playing around. But I can't remember the point I was trying to make now with this.
Well, I guess if you could analyze the actual artist, give it enough, feed it enough, sort of, then when you do the stem extracting, because you've got artifacts still, you could almost get rid of that and just replace it with the AI analyzed version of that artist. Is that what you're trying
completely.
to?
Yeah, very easily. Like, you know, Schwarzenegger singing something, and someone has done a bunch of those things, and they've done, but that then brings then the ownership of that voice, you know, that's something legally that, you know, that those original people. I mean, Hollywood did it years ago. Hollywood bought out the rights to dead actors. So I think this was like, I'm talking 25, 30 years ago, they bought out Humphrey Bogart, and then the technology didn't exist then. But now you can bring Humphrey Bogart back in a film, his voice, and Hollywood own that. And I think at the time it was a news story on BBC, and it was like, they bought Humphrey Bogart,
who did they buy him off?
For 20, I think the family.
That's a bit of a estate, yeah.
And for 20 grand or something at the time. And the family thought, you can't do anything with that. That's an easy 20 grand for us. But you know, it's nuts that the rights.
Mm. And it is scary to sort of think what these companies, because by the time stuff gets released, you know, this technology has been worked on for sometimes decades. I mean, a friend of mine, he used to be really, really high up in Google, and he sort of said that basically this was maybe 10 to 15 years ago. It was just around when Gmail got launched. But he said the technology that they were developing and that was kind of being worked on at that stage surpasses what's available now. So you think how far ahead these companies are, especially big companies like your Googles.
I think from a point of view of then kind of the legal things, and because we're looking at this with a view to hip hop, it's never really got in the way too much, has it? Like, people have just gone out and done it, and it's kind of had that act now, ask permission later. And there has been some key cases, hasn't there, Nick, over the years with like De La Soul and Bismarcky and people like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, in some ways, this is the latest evolution in music sampling, because before, but the reason why it's more complicated now is it's just exponentially bigger as a challenge. So to express what I mean, in a traditional sampling world, you take one recording, and probably one company controls the rights in that recording. Embodied in that recording is also a song, a separate copyright, and there might be 4 different songwriters for that song, say, and maybe each of those 4 songwriters is published by a separate publishing company. So there's 4 publishing companies whose permission you need, and 1 record company. That's a pain. Sometimes it can take a while, but it's doable, right? And it's being done all the time, and things being cleared all the time for every project that you see that has samples on it.
Apart from maybe the Trouble Funk case. Did you hear about the Trouble Funk one?
I haven't heard about this. Is that an uncleared issue?
Oh, that was the one where it was a retrospective clearance, right, for the Beastie Boys. I think Hold It Now, Hit It. And you're going to love this. Good old mate Aaron Fuchs had brought up the Trouble Funk of Toss City, brought up their back catalogue. So of course he was, you know, Mr. Litigious. He went after them. But apparently it got dropped because I think he'd only signed the deal with 2 of the 3 members of Trouble Funk. So right at the last minute, and this happened just as I think Mike D had just passed. So it was like really awful timing. But basically it got dropped right at the last minute because he was like, well, hold on, you haven't got all 3 the members of the original copyright. So
there you
that's
go.
how, even with sampling,
pitfalls there, even with traditional
exactly.
sampling. But the point I was going on to make about how it's different in this AI sampling world is that, let's say that the kind of platform that you demoed earlier on, Rich, let's say there's a lawful version of it where all the major record companies and lots of independent record companies and whoever else willingly give their material to be ingested into the platform, and the platform then generates many outputs for every user that's putting in prompts. Presumably there's going to need to be some kind of transparency, some kind of link. So if you put in at one point Motown, soul, doo-wop, and whoever's recordings have been used and compositions have been used to generate that kind of output, presumably they should be remunerated in some way from whatever you do with your output. But think about how many works are being ingested. We talked about how you gave a great example, Si, a second ago, of how there can be pitfalls and complexities with clearing one piece where there are multiple owners. But think about, thousands and thousands of them being ingested at massive scale, and how do you make sure that you've joined all the dots? And in fact, there are, I'm told, technological challenges even with tracing an output back to a particular input. There are differences of view on this. I hear different things from different people. Sometimes some platform operators say it's impossible, there's no way we can do it, and then others say it's entirely possible, there's a data trail you can do it, they just don't want to do it. It becomes a bit onerous and puts them under pressure. But there's challenges there as well, and some of the new laws that are being looked at. So, for example, the EU just passed an AI Act, and one of the kind of themes, I guess I'll describe it as, within that is this concept of transparency and having a sense of what was ingested what were the inputs, and were those lawful, and maybe connecting that to particular outputs so that you can have some way of attributing value back from the output to the owners of the inputs in some way. But it's see what I mean? It's exponentially more complex than just a one track at a time sample.
It's massive, isn't it?
Yeah, and there will be people that are chasing these things down, won't there? It's like Si mentioned Aaron Fuchs, who, as I understand it, owns the rights to impeach the president, which is probably the most sampled drum break in hip hop.
And he goes after them all.
Yeah.
But the other thing, just what you were saying, the other thing you've got to consider as well as sort of trying to find the data footprint for whatever's being used, what about the fact that it's like the sort of monkeys typing? At some point, it's going to accidentally throw up things that are plagiarized. Do you know what I mean? It's like, what happens then when it suddenly spouts out something that sounds like a Beatles?
Well, that's an interesting question, because I talked before about the input stage and the copyright issues. When you ingest it in the first place into the platform, is that an infringement of copyright? Almost certainly yes, basically. But then there's also another question about, is the output an infringing output? And in a way, it doesn't matter how you've created the track you've got, the song you've got, if it's copied effectively from someone else's work, then you've got a copyright issue. In the same way as if you used other music creation technology, not AI-based technology, to create a new piece that is basically based on someone else's work, then you might well be infringing the copyright in their song. So there's just and that's no different to the historic landscape of, does this song seem very similar to the extent that it's probably been copied from this other song, and like all the kind of song theft cases that we just talked about, the Sheeran cases and all of those others. So it's still that classic question, is this a copy of that or not? No matter how you generate the output. But I think you're quite right that it's even more likely perhaps that there will be outputs that are very similar to certain things that have been input. Especially, you get very specific with your prompt, then it gets quite tricky. There's a whole other minefield as well about, can the prompt be owned? You put in a couple of words for a prompt, that's something a bit more straightforward. What if you put in a whole very detailed description and sufficiently creative that it attracts copyright protection. And you've got a whole nother issue about the prompts as well. So I could literally go on all day with the legal headaches. I'll stop there.
I've stolen people's prompts before.
There you go.
In mid journey, I've seen someone create something, an image, and it's been he's got
great prompt.
He's worked at those prompts. Yeah, he's taken it's taken hours to keep refining these prompts.
And you just grabbed it.
That's the style I want. Yeah. So I've copied all of the keywords, and then I've put what I wanted to create, but in that style, and it's like. And I've saved the prompts in my notes because I might use that next time. So
I mean, there's YouTube videos. Yeah, there's YouTube videos dedicated to copy this series of prompts to get a good ChatGPT blog. I've looked at them. I use some of the techniques, but I don't know. I just find things that I don't know. When I was using ChatGPT, I just found I felt like a school teacher sort of trying to kind of get a student to kind of write a good essay. It was just so hard. I spend more time sort of putting in perfect prompts and trying to get it to not write everything as a meaningful journey and a rich tapestry and all this stuff. It just couldn't write how I was telling it. So it was very disobedient. I kind of gave up in the end. So it's quicker to write myself.
Just mindful of people's time then. A couple of things that I wanted to sort of ask for views on as I've been thinking about this are familiarity. So with hip hop, a big thing with sampling is familiarity can be an amazing thing. Oh, this is sampled off one of my parents' records, or you find that sample and we potentially lose that with the AI. And also the other thing in terms of hip hop is kind of disruption, and those people that were creating, your Keith Mansfields and your people like that in the 60s weren't kind of thinking about, oh, these guys are all going to be going to New York and selling our records for mad money and they're going to be turned into these like street anthems and stuff like that, because this kind of ethos is things are taken and like the rules are rewritten or the rules are abandoned and things are used in ways that they're not intended to be used. So like, say when Marley Marl realised he could put loops into the SP12 or whatever machine it was, and there's these things where it takes one person to work out how to use something in a very different way. So maybe that's something that will happen with hip-hop and where AI comes from. I've not got that kind of beginner's mind to be that person. Every beat I've ever made is a direct copy of something, consciously or unconsciously, of another producer. But, we may have that thing at some point where someone just comes at it from a totally different angle and just changes things. I don't know what you guys think about that.
I think that we will have soon kind of the Jay Dilla of the AI age, where, think of him as like one of the masters of that instrument of the sampler. Basically, it's one of the masters of all time of that instrument, and we'll have someone, or many people, I'm sure, who have that level of craft and skill. Rich, you mentioned about how clever the prompts were that someone had used. There'll be people who master that art, how to use these tools to create something authentic and clever, and maybe then how you then manipulate it in different ways and do different things with it. So I think we'll hear, that's one of the things I'm excited about. I think we'll hear some incredible music that has been, instead of just some naff thing that just sounds like a sort of low quality goofy version of an actual piece of music. I think we're going to get someone that uses it to make stuff that it's not even physically possible without this technology, and I can't wait to hear that.
Do you think
I'm willing to give a go. Sorry, man.
So I was just going to say, do you think it could increase where people appreciate what AI creation becomes as an art form? They'll get a different appreciation for sort of non-AI stuff and the fact that it isn't.
Maybe. I mean, I think there's definitely a challenge around like authenticity. And you have the same problem with just the proliferation of information to internet and the way that we consume information and access information these days, where you've got to think very carefully about the source of it. And I think in a similar way,
with creative material, we're going to have to think a lot about the source of it. But one of the things we're seeing with the way that people behave online and consume things is a lot of people don't really care. They don't really care whether it's true information. They don't really care whether it's real content or not. They just consume, respond, enjoy, whatever. So I don't know. But I'd like to, I believe strongly in the rights of creatives and their value and what they bring to the world. So I'd like to think that that'll be respected, and there's a difference. And look at photography, etc. There's a sort of certain kudos that traditional methods of creating images still hold over sort of more sophisticated, technologically driven methods. But a lot of people don't care about that. We're all just, taking selfies on these instead. So we'll see. There's a place for both.
We need live music still.
Yeah, exactly. People are going to... And also, the way I look at it is, to me, AI is the challenge, isn't it? You've got to beat it. So basically, and I think with hip-hop recently, I think people could have been, a lot of the bigger producers, and the way it's gone, I'm always disappointed in how they aren't harnessing the technology and making better hip hop. So if AI is going to do it for them, then I'm going to try and outdo it. And I'm going to use those tools, especially when stem separation and the quality gets better. Because at the end of the day, the thing you pay for with a musician and creativity, I think in music, is ears. And that's the thing. I compose music, but I can't read. I couldn't tell you a C sharp from a C major or any of that. But I just use my ears, I plod along, but get there in the end. And it's the same with AI, I'm going to be able to hopefully pull out the scrunch face stuff and put it together in a way that, it's going to make people, it's hopefully going to be better than what AI can do on its own, until someone takes my thing and then gets it to analyze and say, do that a little bit better, mate. Come on.
You've brought up a super interesting point there, though, Si, about using your ears versus using what a computer tells you. So say you'll get certain things where someone will chuck a mashup into Serato and it tells them the key for the two songs and it gets it wrong, or it's like a relative minor versus a harmonic minor or anything like that. And things can really, really clash, and a reliance without using your ear can be a bit of a nightmare. It's like that thing with Grimes the other day where her songs were tagged wrong, so she didn't know how to perform. Like having that ear is still going to be super important no matter where this technology gets, and having the feel.
Hope so.
Go on, man. Sorry, I was going to say, it takes the fun out of... I mean, with digital DJing, for example, when Serato first came along, I was amazed by, the fact that you could not have to carry 10 record boxes and break your back on the way to a gig. Bring the Serato box, plug a laptop in, brilliant. And I was still DJing in the way I always DJ, with my ears, and I was still cutting it up and stuff. But I never went to now, like you say, with the, I'm not gonna diss anyone who is using sync buttons or anything, because do what you want to do. Personally, I still enjoy mixing a record by ear, and even though I'll have the digital music for convenience, I still want to do it because it's enjoyable to me to do that process. So you don't want to have too much automation to the point of where you're taking away from the enjoyment of creating something or making something.
I mean, I do worry genuinely about sort of at the point where you can just put in your track and build it in stages and sort of ask, okay, can I get some Jeremy Steig style flute now? And, if it does it brilliantly, it's kind of, it is going to suck a bit of the enjoyment out of it. I'd almost rather kind of get my mate around to play flute and sort of direct him as a human being kind of thing. It's like, but at the same time, if it's sick, if it's like, oh, wow, it does sound like Jeremy Steig, and it's dope. I guess it's just, you're still sort of the orchestrator. You're still telling it that you want flute or you want whatever, a xylophone or a recorder, anything. So I guess you're still kind of the puppet master in a sense. But yeah, as long as there's still elements, and I'm a complete control freak, so I'm pretty sure I'm always going to want to mess with it and sort of, especially when it comes to drums and arrangement and all that sort of stuff, I'm going to want to do stuff. But yeah, and I just think also, as far as killing, what's going to happen, I guess, is, and we're seeing it already, is just people are using it to wholesale just farm out music. And it's obviously that's possible, and it's happening, and a lot of people are doing it to make money, which is fair enough. But I mean, that's going to get saturated pretty soon, if not it is already. So I mean, I think it is just about sort of having that human element, and there's going to be a few people that are going to thrive on that. I think maybe content creators. I'm looking at it all from my lens and hoping that the sort of stuff I do, which is a bit of content creation and sort of tuition. I think people just generally, that it's not going to kill the people who want to creatively make music as a creative outlet are going to want to still do it. You're just going to have new tools to do it. And, if there's some amazing, cool AI tools that will create better music or, more accomplished music, then fantastic, but it will take people out there, hopefully like myself, to inspire people to use these things in a really cool way. And just show those results, and just have a human face to it and say, right, okay, he produced that track using those tools combined with his own programming and whatnot. So, yeah.
Guys, we've done a long hour there, so I think it's probably time for us to wrap it up. Mindful that, as we mentioned at the start, everyone's got day jobs. So if we've just got any takeaways or anything that's not been mentioned, if we just go around the quote unquote room. Anything from you, Rich?
Yeah, I think we mentioned it a little bit, but I would say the big giants of the streaming world, like your Spotify's, if I think that they're open to abuse AI music creation to create a bunch of stuff for their playlists, right? That is going to undercut real artists, and I think that needs to be somehow monitored, or people need to take responsibility for keeping humans employed and paid fairly, rather than entire playlists being just created with the hit of a button, and that's all the consumer ends up listening to. I mean,
just a stat on that, Rich. From some of the research we've done from a site called Ditto Music, there's something called the waterfall strategy, which is around distribution and around releasing a new single every 3 to 4 weeks, because that's what's kind of wanted by Spotify, because they want to constantly have churn to put on their release radar and new music Friday lists and things like that. So that is a realistic pressure.
I mean, I think waterfalling was originally developed as a way, because when you submit an album to Spotify, and let's face it, artistically, an album is like the pinnacle, always has been, but it's not really valued as far as Spotify, because you only get one pitch, and it's all about pitching that one track. So if you release an album on one release date, you only get that one pitch. So waterfalling was a technique that you'd release the album. That would have its own UPC, and then you would drip feed each track each week, which basically just meant you could pitch a new track towards that album each week. So it was kind of sort of a get around the Spotify's sort of pitching strategy. Right. That's, to my knowledge, that was a waterfalling thing. But I think just generally, people do say it's all about consistency, isn't it? But yeah, I mean,
unfortunately,
which is all to do with algorithms and the whole sort of,
Yeah, we speak to DJs and all the time, and it's like, right, I've got to do things on Instagram, and it's like being good at mixing isn't enough. Nick, any final thoughts from yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're seeing how these generative AI tools can create, but what I'm curious to know is, can they innovate? And with other music technology in the past, when it was first introduced,
people said some of the similar things that we're saying about AI. So, for example, the synthesizer, that's not a real instrument. That can't make real music. People that use it aren't real musicians. And the same way with lots of samplers, same thing. You're not making music, you're just taking someone else's music. But those tools gave us techno, hip hop, house music, the whole dance music genre, like all sorts of other stuff, which I love dearly, and we all do. So people use those tools to innovate in really interesting ways. And I'd be fascinated to see how these tools will be used to innovate in the future and give us new things, new genres, new styles, new sounds that we never dreamt up before. And I'd love to see that happen, and for it to happen in a way where human creators get remunerated properly for their talent and their creative work, which they've spent time and energy and effort and money building up, because that's crucially important. And not just owners of rights and owners of technology platforms. I would like to see the people that create stuff being properly remunerated for all this stuff.
Amazing. Nick, Rich, Si, thanks ever so much for your time today. And if we think it's okay from a legal point of view, we'll get some of Rich's library music to bookend both sides of this. And yeah, we'll get it out soon. So if you send me over any links, anything that we've mentioned that you think might be useful for the listeners, we'll get those in the show notes and we'll get it up and out. So yeah, thanks very much for your time, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers, man.
Thank you.
All the best.
Thank you.